Welcome to Sports and Rants, the hottest sports radio show in America.
Sports. Rants. Brett. Pants. Sports. Rants. Brett. Pants.
Welcoming your hosts, Brett and Pants.
And we are on live with former Dolphin, Eagle, Bill, and Redskin, five-time Pro Bowler, Eagles Hall of Famer, and current Executive VP of Football Operations, Troy Vincent. How are you doing today, Troy?
Eagles Hall of Famer.
I'm doing well. Good day, sunny day. Actually, headed back from Philly, back for more.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
All right. Troy, just in case if we lose connection, just call us back whenever you're able to. Just in case. All right, so
we're gonna start out. You're a local guy. Did you grow up an Eagles fan?
I actually grew up. I was a huge Lynn Swann, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, L.C. Greenwood, Mel Blount. I was a huge Steelers fan from Trenton, New Jersey. So I actually lived in a kind of a split neighborhood of Giants, Eagles territory. And I just happened to be that little kid that was dreaming about being number 88, Lynn Swann for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Were you aware of how the Philadelphia fans treated the sports teams?
Yes, but I understood because I was one of those, if you want to call it, when I was old enough to learn that I was a critic. My grandparents and my mom would say, "Stop criticizing, stop being so tough on people, and learn to love your local sports teams." But yes, I was part of that community.
Now, did you grow up playing defense, or is that something that you evolved into as you got older?
No. I wanted to be Lynn Swann. Steelers were my favorite team.
Yeah.
Lynn Swann was my favorite athlete. But then there was some of you all remember a gentleman by the name of Chuck Muncie. He was a running back out in San Diego, wore the goggles. I was just I wanted to score touchdowns. I wanted to be in the end zone celebrating. I didn't turn to defense until my senior year in high school, is when I began doing special teams and playing defensive back.
Now was that switch because somebody told you that was your best chance of making it big, or was that a decision you made?
Yep. As I moved over, I was staying with the Bodley family, James and Linda Bodley. My last 2 years of high school at Pennsbury High School over in Fairless Hills. And Mr. Bodley Bud, God bless his soul, he's deceased. He had just said that, hey, you got to stay home. You got to participate in after-school activities. And it's football season, and I know you love track. You're a basketball player, but at 6 feet, 155 pounds, there's a lot of kids in the United States that can do what you do. But there's not a lot of kids that can backpedal and return football and catch and throw a football. So we should concentrate our efforts on playing football. And that's how I came to love and say, okay, let me put my efforts towards this one sport.
Now, what was your college selection process like for you? You ended up at Wisconsin. Did you have a lot of offers going into it, or?
Yes, sir, and mostly on this northeastern corridor. The Temples, the Rutgers, the Syracuse, the Carolinas, the NC State. I wasn't a good enough student to go to UVA, but I had offers in the Midwest, the Iowas. And frankly, I was just happy to earn a scholarship. And at the particular time of my life back in 1988, it was, get as far away. I wanted to get away from just the everyday life of being in the Northeast. I wanted to change of scenery. I wanted to change of people. I wanted to see something different. And we chose Madison, actually. Bob Babish was a recruiter, but it was the school. It was the school that was the farthest away from Trenton, New Jersey, and Yardley, Pennsylvania. My mom said, no one's going to drive 15 and a half hours to come see you on the weekend.
Wow.
And that's how we got there.
Wow. So what was your experience like playing there? Did the coaches help you become the NFL player you were?
I would contribute, and I would say this. Every coach that was in my life, I used to play for the Marsville Little Bulldogs, the Pop Warner Youth League down in Marsville, Pennsylvania. Coach Jimmy Gundella at Pennsbury High School. He's now deceased. My coaches shaped my life like no other individuals in my life outside of my grandfather and James Bodley. But the coaches, they allowed me to mature. They taught me what true life skills are and how sport and life, how they translate. And then when I went to Wisconsin under, at the time, Don Morton, and then my sophomore year, Barry Alvarez came in and took on a different meaning of coach and discipline and dedication and desire. So we weren't a prominent program like they are today. So you had to learn how to overcome the balance of being a true student athlete. And throughout my collegiate career, my amateur career, my collegiate career, and then on to the professional career, I've just been so fortunate to have wonderful men in my life as head coaches. From Don Shula, my first professional coach, coming to Philly with Ray Rhodes, to Andy Reid, to Joe Gibbs, Mike Malarkey in Buffalo. I've just been fortunate. And then my position coaches have just been outstanding. The Emmett Thomas, the Leslie Frazier's, the Jim Johnsons, the Mel Phillips, the Jerry Grays. I've just had so much success due to the people that have been around me.
You think that your football, like you mentioned about how the coaches helped you with your life skills. Do you think that football helped you gain a work ethic and helped you in your professional career afterwards today?
Oh, no question. We don't talk about the value of football enough to our young people, to my young men and my daughters, the value of football. Football galvanizes communities like no other force in our country. Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night in America, there's one thing that's common. High school football, youth football, where our daughters are out cheerleading, where we're tailgating, where we're watching the passion of college football. There's nothing like the values of football. And the things that I learned in the sport, trials, tribulations, successes, those skills allowed me to transition to my professional life, to my marriage, my home life. It has shaped and molded how the way I raise and father my children. It has shaped my mindset on how I love and I care for my wife. So this is all related to sport and the values of football.
You accredited Don Shula, Ray Rhodes, Joe Gibbs, and Andy Reid to your skills and work ethic. How are their styles of coaching different? Who would you prefer as a coach today?
Well, all, because I took a piece of each one of their garments and I applied those things that from Coach Shula, a student of the game, the way he coached, his poise, going into to Ray, coming into Philly to Ray, the desire, the passion, the fight. He brought a different element. He brought the experience of playing the position, him and Emmett Thomas. When Andy comes in, very detailed oriented, the script every day. Don't get off the script. This is what we know. This is who we are. Then I go to Mike Malarkey, same. Now I get the like Coach Shula, a former player, I get the opportunity to now coach under Mike, play under Mike Malarkey, former player, different skill set, different outlook. And then as I finish my career, Coach Gibbs, Hall of Fame coach, very similar to Coach Shula, very tactical, very grindy. They were that old school where they grind you out every day. So each one of those coaches taught me something. Emmett Thomas taught me more about the game, strategic planning, literally how to take a person apart, how to game plan, how to evaluate the opponent. And, so I learned Mel Phillips the same way, Jerry Gray. These were phenomenal teachers that allowed me to be a student of the game and taking all of those skills and transferring those into the business world, into those things that I'm doing today.
Now, what was the draft process like for you? Did Don Shula have a big impact on that and to you going to Miami?
I think yes, and I would say so. Most probably don't remember, but Coach Shula actually traded with his son the Cincinnati pick, so there was a swap. I was projected to go anywhere between 2 and 5, and obviously it didn't happen that way. And when the third pick was up, the phone had rang back in the green room, and you heard a bunch of different things going on. And the fourth pick came, and Coach Shula called me on the phone, and he said, how would you like to be a Dolphin? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a Dolphin because the Dolphins have their picks like 3 picks later, and I won't be around. And little did I know, there was a trade made, and boom, Cincinnati Bengals take David Klingler. I go to Miami. So I thought he was very instrumental, and I have the opportunity to go to a place where we won early, played with Dan Marino, for those 4 straight years. We couldn't get past the Buffalo Bills, but we were in the AFC Championship games. We were winning the division. So I think Coach Shula had a lot to do with my success, but in particular the draft had a lot to do with me landing in Miami.
Now, as a young kid coming into Miami, you're now faced with playing under one of the greatest coaches of all time, Don Shula, and playing on the same field as one of the best quarterbacks ever to live, Dan Marino. What was that like for you?
Well, one, I was just so appreciative to be there. And, a kid growing up in Jersey, Philly, I just wanted to, just want a little something better for my life and the family as I move forward. I was appreciative. It didn't matter whether I was in Miami or wherever I was, but being out there, and I happened to go from one of the most losing programs in college sport at the time to one of the most winning and most historic franchises at the professional level. So it gave me a sense of how to win, how to truly prepare, and this is what winning feels like.
During practice, when you went against Marino, did that help you get go against any quarterbacks that?
Oh, no question. That's how you get better. We just talk about Danny, but during that time, you had Tony Martin was a wide receiver. Mark Ingram was a wide receiver. You had Irving Fryer. My first year, you had both Mark Duper and Mark Clayton. So they still were there during training camp. You had Keith Jackson at tight end. We had Eric Green, the big tight end coming over from Pittsburgh, Bobby Humphrey. So every day, not only was I playing against the best quarterback in the league, I was also playing against the best wide receivers that were in our game. So I didn't have a choice but to get better.
Now, did you feel that the work ethic Don Shula put on you guys followed you throughout your career, and it made you a better player because you had him as your coach your rookie season?
Again, I'll go back to high school. Jim Dundella as a Pennsbury Falcon, going into Madison, Wisconsin, and coaching up under Barry Alvarez, who's a grinder. He taught you how to work, or you couldn't survive. Going into Miami, I was prepared for the regiment of professional football, the daily grind of what it takes to be successful. So I would contribute. I'm going back to high school, and again, learning how to work, what work ethic is all about. Getting up when I was knocked down. I learned that at Pennsbury, carried over when I went to Wisconsin, and it followed me. I kept that trait and those characteristics as I entered into my professional career.
Now, after a few years with the Dolphins, you'd come basically home to Philadelphia to play with the Eagles. How is that experience different from coming into Miami as a rookie to now moving to back to Philly?
Was there more pressure put on you?
Oh yes, absolutely. But I wanted to have an opportunity. One of the reasons why most thought I was going to end up either in Detroit or Cincinnati, but it was important for me to come back home. I'm now a mature professional. I've had 4 successful years. I understand the work-life balance. I understand the pressure of people wanting and asking for things. But I wanted to have an opportunity to come back and play in front of my family, a place so that my grandmother had lived with me when I was in Miami. But I wanted to have an opportunity with my old school teachers, my mom, my brother, just close friends and family can have an opportunity to drive 23 miles and come watch me play. So I was excited. I felt like I was mature enough to handle the pressure of the Philadelphia community. And the only thing that we want is blue collar. And we're passionate about our sports. We love our sports, and we demand winning. And we accept nothing else but that. If you perform, we celebrate you. If you don't perform, then we're going to ask you to kindly depart. It's always been that way. And I felt like at that time I was ready. And I always say the only pressure is the pressure that you put on yourself. I wanted to be held accountable. I wanted no more than what was expected of me. I had no false expectations. Every Sunday when I came out at the vet and in the link, you had 70,000 people. They were expecting one thing, for you to show up and perform, and no complaining if you lost.
You grew up as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. How would you say Pittsburgh compares to Philadelphia as far as their fans?
Well, they're passionate about their football there. That black and gold, they're everywhere. And, throughout my playing career, my playing experience, I've traveled across the country. Those Steelers fans they're passionate about their black and gold. Just like, hey, we bleed Philly green. We're passionate about our Eagles. I can't tell you the difference in that fan base. I do know that they both dearly love their football teams.
Now, do you think growing up in the Philadelphia area and around communities that were huge Eagles fans helped you as a player to understand what you were coming into?
Oh, no question. No question. It is what it is. It's black and white. Did you win or did you lose? And the weak was not going to survive in the neighborhoods. You're gonna stand here and you're gonna fight, or you can't come back to this park to play anymore. And that was just the attitude. There was no room for let me negotiate. Let's talk about this or next week. No, today. Did I win or did I lose? But I think that whole journey through high school, in the preparation in Miami, prepared me for. Think about this. On Tuesdays, I'm going back. So every day I had an opportunity in Philly to come back home. So I'm going back to the barbershops and to the schools and walking the neighborhoods that I grew up in. And your family members and your friends, they're your toughest critics. So imagine that barbershop talk when I walked in there on Friday and Dallas is coming to town, or the Giants, but more in particular Dallas, because that was the Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith era. So imagine going to the barbershop and someone about to say, man, they about to do this to y'all. Or the next Tuesday, you go in there to get a shape up, you go into the grocery store, and somebody, and someone's looking at you like, I cannot believe you did that. So that was the kind of, you just
Yes.
wanted to make sure you played well so that you could just walk the neighborhood.
Yeah, you felt the pressures from the community.
Absolutely.
So
You go. I remember once going in the barbershop. We didn't play well one week, and you go in there, and sometimes when you're in the shop, that's supposed to be relaxing. So I shut my eyes like I was asleep, so that nobody would talk to me. Like they were like, "Man, you ain't sleep. Get your butt up." No, so it was get up. Do not sleep, and it was just real. It's real, and it's authentic.
now, do you think during your playing time, you think the Philly fans were worse than they are today?
No, they've always been the same. They want a winner. Our Philly fans want winners. It's been a long time on the football side. Championship. We had a Super Bowl run back in 2003, 2004, and we missed it. They're looking for a winner. We've had some great talent come through the city, and the fan has been the same. So we're asking more from our fans today. With all the different things going on, with all the different options, people can stay home, have a great experience, run a TV, trying to get, we're working to get people at the stadiums and keep them there to have a good game experience. But the one thing that, the one common denominator is winning. Winning cures problems, and it keeps people coming back, and that's what they've always been that way. Back from the Buddy Ryan era, we can to the Dick Mill. They want winners.
Do you think they would have won the Super Bowl if you stayed with the team?
No, sir. I mean, it was time for me to leave. My contract had ended, and Frank, most don't know, Coach Reed and Joe Banner at the time, they offered me the same contract that I accepted in Buffalo was the same exact contract that the Philadelphia Eagles offered me to stay and finish my career there. But I felt it was for this organization to move forward. You had Lito Shepherd, you had Sheldon Brown, you had Mike Lewis. Those individuals, Doc was right on the verge of becoming the player that we all saw. But you needed Troy to get out of their way so that they can lead. Donovan was right on the verge. And as a leader, you have to know when is your time to move on. In the workspace, we call it succession planning. And I felt like, hey, those 2 or 3 years that I had the opportunity to develop the Sheldons, the Litos, the Bobbies, the Als, but more in particular, Brian, because he was my locker mate, and looking across at Donovan, these individuals needed me to step away so that they could be the leaders that they were called to be. I was answering the questions for the offense and the defense and during the press conferences. It was so important that they had a voice, and that wasn't going to happen as long as I was in the locker room. People were always going to go to me, or they would make sure they came to me. So it was time for me to leave. They brought in Terrell Owens. They had a phenomenal team. They had a phenomenal run. They got beat by a good Patriot team.
You mentioned about Brian Dawkins. Was he the true leader on the defense?
We had many leaders. Brian was one of many. Brian was an emotional leader. So was Jeremiah Trotter. Hugh Douglas. I think we all call it a shared responsibility. Our coaches contributed. From Ron Rivera, Steve Spagnolia, Leslie Frazier. It started with Coach Johnson. But we all shared in and we all played our part. No one stepped on each other's toes. No one was more greater than the other. That was why we were a special group. That 8-year run, we were a special group. Bobby Taylor led in his own way.
What about Jim Johnson's defense that made you guys such a force and a threat to the opposing offense? Was it the blitzing?
He called the plays to the talent that he had. And it was, again, this is my talent. This is our strengths. This is our weaknesses. It was his philosophy, and we found the right. I think there was the right combination of philosophy and talent that allowed us to be consistent. And most don't talk about it, but we were good over that span because we were consistent. He was consistent in his calls, his expectations of us, what we could or what we couldn't do, and then we knew what to expect from Jim. So I think a little bit of philosophy mixed in with some decent talent.
You mentioned about his consistency and his ability to adapt to the players that he came into the team with. Do you think that he, without Dawkins, yourself, and Taylor and Douglas, that if he had other players, would Jim Johnson's defense would have been as prolific as it was?
I think so, because I would say Coach Reed, Joe Banner, Tom Heck, they were bringing in good talent every year. What Andy created, Coach Reed created when he was in Philadelphia, he created what we call a program, and it was a good system. So year in and year out, when it was time to depart, from when you got your aging veterans, they had good young talent that was ready to step in. And I credit that to the coaching staff, to the scouting department, to Joe Banner. Eagles never had a salary cap problem. So it's a combination of a lot of things. Jeffrey Lurie allowed the team, his head coach to coach, his general manager to be a general manager, his president to be the president. And, Jeffrey Lurie doesn't get the credit that he deserves here. You get a lot of owners that some of them are involved day to day. He allowed the coaches and his scouts and his personnel people to do that, what he brought them in. And I think it was a combination of all.
Now, you seem to have your most success when you came to the Eagles. You were a 5-time Pro Bowler. Do you attribute that to Andy Reid and Johnson's coaching styles?
I actually thought I had my best years in Miami, but that's not what the voters said as far as those who were acknowledging who the Pro Bowlers were and so on and so forth. But I actually thought those first 4 years in Miami were, from a play standpoint, I felt like were my best years personally. But I can't give enough credit to Ray, Emmett, Leslie, Andy, and what they did was they just kept molding my mind and my body, and I bought into what they were teaching.
Now, do you think you weren't a Pro Bowler in those first 4 years because people still viewed you as not an established veteran yet, and then when you came to Philadelphia, you were the guy?
There's a little combination, and so when I think back at my Miami days, you had the Rock Woodsons, the Terry McDaniels. I was up against, perennial All-Pros year in and year out. Had the numbers of interceptions. I was on a winning team. You had Albert Lewis in Kansas City, had Dale Carter over there, but we had some aging, long-time vets that had played for an extended period playing good football. I was up against the household names. But from a performance number standpoint, I was banging at the door. When I come over to the NFC, it's a new day. Some of the guys were leaving. You had Dion, you had Eric Allen. There was a few there, but I had established myself, and then we began to win. And once we begun winning, I came from a winning franchise in Miami. Things just start falling together, and I started receiving some of the individual accolades that many thought I probably should have earned before. But it's nothing like the team wins, team victories. And as I would tell everybody, hey, God had a plan. When it was my time, it was my time. So I don't look back on it as a negative.
Now, you're in the Eagles record books for a lot of things, but in 2012 you were inducted into their Hall of Fame. What was that like for you as a local kid to reach the peak of Philadelphia sports?
Well, I tell you, special moment in my life. Probably it's something that again, all of this goes back to the hometown kid, the local kid coming back. And how many pros, how many athletes can actually say they've reached the pinnacle and being considered one of the greatest of a 75, 80-year history at the professional ranks of their hometown sports franchise. So for me, it was great. I mean, it was along with my family. Everybody can appreciate. I can go to the barbershop now. Nobody can talk junk for the rest of my life. So that's, for me, that was a special moment. I really appreciate it. It's something that I cherish. I'm looking at that photo every time I go to my house. Myself, my wife, children walking on the field that night. That's a special moment for me.
Hey Troy, if you have to go, just give us a word. But we're just gonna keep on asking you until you tell us, I guess.
I got about 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. So some final questions on Philadelphia. What do you like most about Philadelphia? What was the highlight of your career?
Highlight people.
People?
Why people? Yeah, because a lot of times in life you get people that are just. I love authentic people, real people, passionate people, people who care, and it is what it is. It's black and white, and and that's how I am today in my management style, leading my group. That's what I expect from other people. It's black and white. Did you get it done or didn't you? And I have an appreciation for that in the local community, that the greater Philadelphia area. That's who the people are. They love their city. They don't let anybody come in here talking about the lack of, or what we have, or what we don't have. What we don't have. It's just about community. It's about community, embracing a beautiful community, the community of brotherly love.
All right, Troy, final question for you. With you being former head of the NFLPA and now being the executive vice president of football operations, in the future, could we ever see you becoming the commissioner? If you were ever offered the job, would you take it?
I am today, and I get asked that question all the time, and today I want to be the best executive vice president of football operations. I have no idea what God has in store for me in the future. My journey in football has been fabulous. I'm happy today that I'm still a contributor to the game of football. I'm actually still part of developing, growing, and preserving the great game of football. Again, what God has in store for me in the future, it'll play itself out.
Troy, we thank you for coming on with us. We appreciate your time. Would you like to plug anything about your charities or anything before you go?
Well, yeah, Love Thy Neighbor is me and my wife's local charity. We've co-chaired that since the early '90s. Love Thy Neighbor, LTNCDC.org. And again, it's about the people of Jersey, about the people of Philadelphia, and just us getting involved with young people, reading, writing, making sure people are eating and they're properly clothed. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your stories, and take care.
We appreciate your time. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
It was great talking to you.
Yep.
Bye.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brent and Pants. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrantz.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.